I know I'm mostly expected to speak about our work in Ukraine, how it has been affecting us, and how we see this this conflict going on and ending in the nearest, we hope, future, and how we can contribute to that. But in this part, we are more expected to speak from the personal perspective. And I must admit, a lot of things that's happening in Ukraine right now, I can resonate with that very easily, unfortunately for myself and for my country as well, because the country I come from, Georgia, has been through very similar experiences more than once in the rather recent history. So I was born in Georgia. I grew up there. My childhood and my teenage years coincided with the years when the Soviet Union started collapsing and then eventually collapsed. And that was the time of military conflict in the civil wars throughout the southern and eastern parts of the Soviet Union. With 11 or 12, I could, by its sound, I could distinguish what kind of small guns were used, and I knew whether it was serious enough to seek shelter or not. We didn't know anymore how the central heating worked and what it meant. My father somehow gained access to a battery from a tank, which, if charged, could survive like 2 weeks. So we had a source of kind of improvised electricity. So once I was back with Fabrizio in Ukraine in May last year, it kind of felt like traveling back in my childhood, because when we arrived in Ukraine, there was no electricity. There was rarely you could see cars in the streets. And there were no children or no young people in the streets, mostly men, mostly elderly people. And back then in Georgia, I could see how difficult it was to restore peace and to start working on justice part as well. But the difference now was I could contribute to this process in Ukraine, not just witness. And there was one particular place which I felt I had made a difference on professional, but also on the personal level as well. A rather small city for Ukrainian terms, 500,000, a big city for if you look at it from the European perspective, from the Western European perspective. Where at the Azov Sea, where when I first arrived in 2016, the ruins were there still to see from a brief but very violent conflict with the same neighbor. And what we decided back then was that we needed a usually we call it low-hanging fruits, but that's not the right expression. We were looking for something that could be fixed quickly, but would have an impact on the community on the ground and create hope first, and then probably trust as well in the state institutions and in life as a whole. So we found this abandoned Soviet-style cinema theater on the left bank of the city. The city's name is Mariupol, which you have heard probably about, which suffered the most throughout this war. So we helped to change this abandoned, devastated place into a new landmark where more than 400 public services were provided to people, starting with marriage registrations to obtaining driver's licenses. And it got so involving and so fulfilling that at some point I ended myself not just helping with designing the functional areas within the building, which obviously was my job, but also sitting next to the designers and look into how the doors should be evolving doors, or other styles of doors should be installed, and even choosing the colors and everything. And I think rarely had my job being so tangible in terms of the results that were created. And when we, end of 2019, went there and together with President Zelensky and lots of ambassadors, opened this place with hundreds of children playing, in front of the building. it was probably one of the most fulfilling moments in my professional life. I took a couple of pictures there, which I still have on my phone with these children. And then just 5 or maybe 10 days into the war, I once again received pictures from people who happened to be in the Mariupol with the same building, or rather what remained from the building. And interestingly, even the focus or the angle of the photographs was the same as I had taken them. And you cannot really focus on anything else looking at these pictures now, comparing them, just wondering, like, are these children still alive? Are they safe? Did they end up in any of the infiltration camps? Have been they abducted? Are they now forced to speak a different language in a different country and become something completely else than they would have been in if this war didn't happen? So, and then we have no idea of the people we worked back then, whether they are still there, whether they have survived this conflict. But it's also as tangible as it has been as an achievement back then. I think this building is another very tangible goal for me as well. The day we go back there and I get another chance to help rebuilding the same building, I think that could consider, from my perspective, a very strong sign that peace has been restored in this part, and then we can start working on the justice part as well. Thank you very much.